The stench of fear permeated the underground auction house on Nexus Station. Selena stood in her cage, her iridescent skin dulled by weeks of captivity. Once a proud member of the Luminari species, known throughout the galaxy for their empathic abilities and healing powers, she now stood with her head bowed, wearing a neural dampener that suppressed her natural abilities. The auctioneer, a brutish drachnid with scales that gleamed under the harsh lights, moved down the line of cages. Next up, a pure Luminari healer. Imagine the profit potential, ladies and gentlemen. Their healing abilities alone are worth 10 times what you'll pay today. Selena felt the wave of greed and dark intentions washing over her despite the dampener. Even with her abilities suppressed, she could sense the rot in their souls. Her species was nearly extinct now, hunted to near extinction for their abilities. The few who remained lived in hiding or, like her, ended up in chains. A figure at the back of the room caught her attention. A human male, tall and lean, dressed in worn spacer's clothing. Unlike the others, his emotions were carefully controlled, almost blank. His steel-gray eyes met hers for a brief moment, and she felt something she hadn't experienced in months, curiosity. The bidding starts at 50,000 credits, the auctioneer announced, his voice bouncing off the metal walls. The human stepped forward. 100,000 credits. His voice was quiet but carried authority. The room fell silent. Even the auctioneer seemed surprised by the bold move. I have 100,000 credits from the human. Do I hear 110,000? A few mutters rippled through the crowd, but no one challenged the bid. Most buyers preferred to start low and work their way up. This direct approach had thrown them off balance. Sold. The gavel cracked like a gunshot. The human approached the cage as the guards deactivated the energy barriers. He moved with the fluid grace of someone familiar with violence but didn't exhibit the casual cruelty Selena had come to expect. He signed the transfer documents without a word, his face impassive. Your property, sir, the auctioneer said, handing over the control key for the neural dampener. The human's jaw tightened at the word property, but he remained silent. He gestured for Selena to follow him. Her legs trembled as she took her first steps outside the cage, expecting pain or harsh commands, but none came. They walked through the station's dim corridors in silence until they reached a small spacecraft docked in one of the lower bays. It wasn't flashy or new, but Selena could tell it was well maintained. The human opened the airlock and motioned her inside. Once they were sealed inside the ship, he turned to her. My name is James Mitchell. I'm going to remove the neural dampener now. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I'm not going to hurt you. Selena stared at him, trying to understand his intentions. Without the dampener, she could easily incapacitate him with her abilities. He must know this. Why? James pulled out the control key. Because slavery is an abomination, and your people deserve better. He deactivated the dampener, which fell away with a soft click. The sudden rush of her restored abilities made Selena gasp. Colors seemed brighter, and her awareness of the emotional landscape around her flooded back. She could sense James clearly now, determination, compassion, and underneath it all, a deep anger not directed at her, but at what had been done to her. I work with an underground network, James explained, keeping his distance to avoid overwhelming her restored senses. We help people like you escape and find safe havens. You're not my property. You're free to go wherever you want once we're off this station. Selena sank into a nearby chair, her legs finally giving out. Freedom. The word felt foreign after so long in captivity. She looked at James, really looked at him now, seeing the scars that marked his hands and the weariness in his eyes. Why do you risk yourself for others? James moved to the pilot seat and began the launch sequence. Someone once asked me what humanity's greatest strength was. Most people say it's our adaptability or our technology. He paused, checking the navigation systems. But I think it's our capacity to look at something terrible and say, no more. To stand up when no one else will. The ship hummed to life around them as Selina processed his words. For the first time in months, she felt something bloom in her chest, hope. As they pulled away from Nexus Station, James glanced back at her. Get some rest. We have a long journey ahead, and you'll need your strength. He hesitated, then added softly, welcome to the first day of your new life. Selina watched the stars streak past the viewport, each one carrying her further from her nightmare. She didn't know if she could trust this human completely, but for now, she would allow herself to believe in the possibility of freedom. Sometimes, she realized, that was enough to begin healing. The safe house on Avalon's third moon wasn't much to look at, a simple prefab structure nestled among towering purple leaf trees, but to Selina, it was paradise compared to her previous prison. 3 days had passed since James had brought her here, and she was still learning to trust that this wasn't another elaborate trap. She stood by the window, watching the twin moons rise over the horizon. Her iridescent skin had begun to regain some of its natural luster, though the emotional scars ran far deeper than the physical ones. The door slid open behind her, and she tensed instinctively before recognizing James's familiar emotional signature, steady, calm, with undertones of carefully controlled anger that never seemed to fully fade. Brought you some food, he said, setting down a tray of local fruits and synthetic proteins. The doctor will be here tomorrow to check on your recovery. Selina turned, her luminescent eyes studying him. You trust this doctor? With my life, James replied, leaning against the wall. Dr. Reyna has been helping refugees like you for 15 years. She understands discretion. Selina picked up one of the fruits, its sweet scent triggering memories of her homeworld. How many? She asked quietly. How many others have you saved? James was quiet for a moment, his emotions flickering with a mix of pride and sadness. 73 over the past 5 years. Not enough, but each one matters. She took a bite of the fruit, savoring the taste of real food. The others at the auction, you couldn't save them all. No, James admitted, his jaw tightening. We have limited resources, and we have to choose our moments carefully. Each rescue risks exposing the network. He met her gaze. But we're working on something bigger. A way to shut down the entire operation. Selina set down the fruit, her appetite suddenly gone. The syndicate is powerful. They have connections throughout the sector. Yes, they do. James pushed off from the wall and moved to stand beside her at the window. Which is why we need help. Your help, if you're willing. She turned to him sharply. My help? Your empathic abilities, James explained. You can sense deception, track emotional signatures. With your help, we could identify key players, find their weak points. He held up his hands. But only if you choose to. You don't owe us anything. Selina walked to the other side of the room, needing space to think. Her abilities were both a gift and a curse. They had made her valuable to the syndicate, but they had also helped her survive, letting her anticipate when her captors were in particularly dangerous moods. Why do you care so much? She asked finally. Most humans I've encountered only see my kind as tools to be used. James was quiet for a long moment, his emotions swirling with old pain. 10 years ago, I was a different person. A corporate security contractor. I told myself I was just doing my job, following orders. He pulled something from his pocket, a small holographic projector. An image flickered to life, a young Luminari child, smiling at the camera. Her name was Lyra, he said softly. I was assigned to guard a research facility. Didn't ask questions about what happened inside. Until one day, I found her hiding in a ventilation shaft. She was terrified, but she still tried to heal a cut on my hand. He clicked off the projector. I couldn't save her. By the time I decided to act, it was too late. But I promised myself that day that I would never stand by again. Selina felt the truth of his words, the deep well of regret and determination that drove him. She approached slowly, placing her hand on his arm. Through the physical contact, his emotions became crystal clear, no deception, no hidden agenda, just a burning need to right the wrongs he had witnessed. Teaching me to trust again won't be easy, she warned. James smiled faintly. Nothing worth doing ever is. If I help you, she continued, I need to know everything. No secrets. No half-truths. My people have been betrayed too many times by those claiming to be allies. Full transparency, James agreed. Though some of what you learn might be dangerous. Selina lifted her chin. I survived the syndicate's cages. I can handle the truth. For the first time, she felt something new emanate from James, respect, tinged with admiration. Then let's begin. Tomorrow, after Dr. Reyna's visit, I'll show you everything we know about the syndicate's operations in this sector. As night fell over the safe house, Selina returned to the window. The moons had risen fully now, bathing the alien forest in silver light. She thought of all those still trapped in darkness, waiting for someone to remember they existed. Perhaps James was right, sometimes healing meant facing the darkness rather than running from it. She pressed her hand against the cool glass, watching her natural bioluminescence reflect back at her. She was done being a victim. It was time to become something else, a survivor who fought back. Dr. Reyna's visit had confirmed what Selina already knew, she was healing physically, but the psychological recovery would take far longer. 2 weeks had passed since she'd agreed to help James, and each day brought new challenges and small victories. The Safehouse's command center hummed with activity as holographic displays showed shipping routes and security patterns across the sector. Selina stood before the largest display, her fingers tracing patterns in the air as she mapped the emotional echoes she'd detected during her captivity. The transfer points aren't random, she said, her voice stronger now than it had been weeks ago. They move their cargo along these routes because the emotional trauma creates patterns they can track. Pain leaves traces in space, like ripples in water. James leaned forward, studying the paths she'd highlighted. They're using suffering as a navigation system. That's monstrous, Selina finished. But efficient. My people can sense these echoes across vast distances. The Syndicate uses captive luminari to guide their ships along these corridors of pain. The revelation hung heavy in the air. James's emotions radiated controlled fury, but his voice remained steady. Can you use these echoes to find other captives? Selina nodded slowly. Yes, but it's difficult. Connecting to that much pain is overwhelming. She didn't mention the nightmares that came afterward, but James's concern suggested he knew anyway. We don't have to do this, he reminded her. There are other ways. No, Selina interrupted. This is the fastest way to find them. I can handle it. She straightened, her skin pulsing with determination. But I'll need your help to stay grounded. James stepped closer, his presence steady and reassuring. Whatever you need. Selina placed her hands on the holographic interface, closing her eyes. Her consciousness expanded outward, following the trails of anguish that crisscrossed the sector like dark veins. Each echo carried fragments of memory, terror, despair, fleeting moments of hope crushed by cruelty. There, she whispered, her voice strained. A transport ship, heading toward the Nexus. At least 20 captives aboard. Different species, but... She gasped, her eyes flying open. 2 of my people. Children. James was already moving, sending encrypted messages to his network. How long do we have? 3 days before they reached the auction house. Selina's legs trembled, and James caught her arm, steadying her. The physical contact sent a jolt through both of them, concern, trust, and something deeper neither was ready to name. You did well, he said softly, helping her to a chair. Rest now. I'll start making arrangements. But Selina gripped his wrist, her luminescent eyes intense. I'm coming with you this time. It's too dangerous, James protested. If they recognize you dash. They won't. My people can alter our bioluminescence patterns. They knew me as a broken thing, radiating fear and submission. They won't recognize me as I am now. Her voice hardened. Those children need someone who understands what they're going through. Someone who can help them trust again. James studied her for a long moment, his emotions shifting from protective concern to grudging acceptance. You've been practicing combat techniques when you think I'm not watching. Selina smiled faintly. You're not the only one who can be sneaky. Fine, he agreed finally. But we do this smart. No unnecessary risks. He pulled up detailed schematics of the transport ship class they'd likely encounter. Show me what else you've learned while I wasn't watching. Over the next 2 days, they planned and prepared. Selina proved to be a quick study, combining her natural abilities with the practical skills James taught her. She learned to channel her empathic powers defensively, to project calm or confusion when needed. But more than that, she learned to trust her own strength again. Each successful practice session, each small victory over her fears, helped rebuild what her captors had tried to destroy. And through it all, James was there, pushing when she needed motivation, stepping back when she needed space, always radiating that steady belief in her capabilities. The night before the mission, Selina found James on the safehouse's small observation deck, cleaning his weapons with mechanical precision. His emotions were tightly controlled, but she could sense the underlying tension. You're worried, she said, sitting beside him. Of course I am. He set down the disassembled pulse rifle. Not about your abilities. You've proven yourself more than capable. I'm worried because I've seen how these missions can go wrong. One mistake, one moment of bad luck. Selina placed her hand over his, stilling its movement. You taught me that humanity's greatest strength is saying no more to injustice. Let me be strong too. James turned his hand, intertwining their fingers. The gesture was simple but laden with meaning, trust, partnership, a promise to protect each other. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars well overhead, each lost in thoughts of tomorrow's challenges. Finally, James spoke. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we show the syndicate they picked the wrong people to underestimate. Selina nodded, rising gracefully. At the door, she paused. James. Thank you. Not just for saving me, but for helping me save myself. His smile was soft in the starlight. You did the hard part. I just gave you room to grow. As she prepared for sleep, Selina felt a curious lightness in her chest. Tomorrow would bring danger, yes, but also purpose. She was no longer a victim to be rescued, but a warrior choosing her own path. And she wasn't walking it alone. The transport ship loomed before them, a dark silhouette against the backdrop of space. James's small craft approached under the guise of a routine maintenance vessel, their forged credentials holding up under initial scrutiny. Inside the cramped cargo hold, Selina focused on maintaining the careful alterations to her bioluminescence, transforming her natural glow into the dull patterns of a different species. Remember, James said softly, checking his weapons one final time, if anything goes wrong dash. I get back to the ship and leave without you, Selina finished. But we both know I won't. His emotions flickered with a mix of exasperation and affection. You're supposed to be learning to follow orders. I'm learning to make my own choices, she corrected, her luminescent eyes meeting his. That was the point, wasn't it? Before he could respond, the ship's comm crackled. Maintenance vessel, you are cleared for docking in Bay 3. Keep your crew in the designated areas. James activated their ship's automated docking sequence. Showtime. They moved through the transport ship's corridors with practiced efficiency, their maintenance uniforms and confident bearing deflecting casual scrutiny. Selena's empathic abilities guided them, sensing the concentration of fear and pain that marked the location of the holding cells. 2 guards ahead, she whispered. They're bored, distracted. Playing some kind of gambling game. James nodded, pulling out a small device. Perfect timing for a security systems check. He activated the device, sending a cascade of minor alerts through the ship's systems. The guards cursed and hurried off to investigate, leaving their post temporarily unmanned. The holding cell area was worse than Selena had expected. Cramped cages lined the walls, filled with beings of various species. The air was thick with despair and resignation. In the furthest corner, she found what they'd come for, 2 young luminari, their natural glow almost completely dimmed by fear. Hello, little ones, she said softly in their native language, her true patterns briefly shining through her disguise. Their eyes widened in recognition. James kept watch while Selena worked on the cage locks, her fingers trembling slightly as memories of her own captivity threatened to overwhelm her. A small hand reached through the bars, touching her arm gently. One of the children, offering comfort even in their own distress. The gesture nearly broke her heart. We need to move, James warned. Guards will be back soon. Selena helped the children out, then looked at the other cages. We can't leave them. James was already moving to the control panel. Already on it. System override in 3, 2 dash. The lights suddenly flared red, and alarms blared throughout the ship. James swore softly. We've got company. Someone noticed the security breaches. Selena gathered the Luminari children close, her mind racing. The other prisoners. Cages are unlocked. Emergency protocols should have activated escape pod release. James tossed her a small shield generator. Time for Plan B. Heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. Selena pushed the children behind her, raising the shield just as weapons fire erupted around them. James moved with lethal efficiency, his training evident in every precise shot and movement. But they were outnumbered, and more guards were coming. Selena felt a familiar sensation building inside her, the same desperate energy that had helped her survive her own captivity. But this time, it was different. This time, she had something to fight for. James, shield your eyes, she called out. He complied instantly, trusting her without question. Selena let her carefully maintained disguise fall away, her natural bioluminescence flaring to blinding intensity. The guard staggered, crying out in pain and confusion. She pushed her empathic abilities to their limit, projecting waves of disorientation and fear back at their attackers. Move! James shouted, grabbing her hand. They ran through the chaos, the children keeping pace surprisingly well. Behind them, other escaped prisoners were fighting their way to the escape pods, using the confusion to their advantage. They were almost to their ship when a hulking figure stepped out of a side corridor, the transport's captain, his cybernetic enhancements gleaming in the emergency lights. Fascinating, he rumbled. A luminari with spine. Rare specimen indeed. James stepped forward, placing himself between Selena and the captain. Back off. It's over. The captain smiled cruelly. Nothing's over. The syndicate always collects its property. Selena felt James's fury spike at the word property, but before either of them could move, the Luminari children acted. Working in perfect synchronization, they combined their abilities, creating a pulse of pure emotional energy that sent the captain crashing into the wall, his cybernetics shorting out from the empathic overload. Well, James said after a moment, that's new. Selena hurried the children toward their ship, her heart pounding. Our people have many abilities. Not all of them are for healing. They made it to their vessel just as the transport's backup systems began to fail. The escape pods were launching, carrying their freed passengers to predetermined rescue points throughout the sector. James piloted them away from the dying ship, his movements precise despite his exhaustion. Once they were safely in hyperspace, Selina helped the children settle in for rest. When she returned to the cockpit, she found James watching her with an unreadable expression. "You didn't follow the plan," he said finally. "Neither did you." She sat in the co-pilot's seat. "The plan didn't account for saving everyone." "No, it didn't." He smiled slightly. "Guess we both have things to learn about making the impossible possible." Selina reached over, taking his hand. Through the contact, she felt his relief, his pride in her, and something deeper growing between them, something neither had expected but both were beginning to welcome. "Where to now?" she asked softly. James squeezed her hand. "First, we get these kids somewhere safe. Then." His eyes held a fierce determination. "Then we take the fight to the syndicate itself. No more half measures." Selina nodded, watching the stars streak past. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles. But for now, in this moment, she was exactly where she needed to be, flying toward a future she had chosen, with people worth fighting for. 1 month after the transport ship rescue, the safe house on Avalon's moon had transformed into a command center. Holographic displays filled the room with data streams and tactical projections, while encrypted communications flowed in from resistance cells across the sector. At the center of it all stood Selina and James, planning their final strike against the syndicate. Their central operations hub, James explained to the assembled team of former captives and resistance fighters. Hidden in plain sight on New Singapore Station. Everything we've learned points there. Selina traced the station's layout with glowing fingers. Their security is built to detect traditional threats, weapons, explosives, forged credentials. But they've never faced a coordinated attack from those they considered property. The rescued Luminari children, Nova and Kai, had proven to be a watershed moment. Word had spread through hidden channels that the impossible had happened, captives fighting back, escaping, joining the resistance. More followed, bringing with them intimate knowledge of syndicate operations and a burning desire for justice. "The plan is simple," Selina continued, her voice carrying the quiet authority she'd developed over the past months. "We go in through their front door." A murmur ran through the assembled group. James stepped forward, his steady presence anchoring the room. "The syndicate's power comes from fear and control. They've never imagined their victims could become their downfall." The plan was audacious. Selina would lead a team of former captives, posing as a new shipment of merchandise being delivered to the hub. James and his strike team would infiltrate separately, using the chaos that would follow as cover to access the syndicate's central databases. The night before the operation, Selina found James in their usual spot on the observation deck. The twin moons cast silver light across his features as he studied mission parameters on his datapad. "You're worried again," she said, sitting beside him. He set down the datapad. "You know me too well." "No," she corrected softly. "I just understand you." She took his hand, their fingers intertwining with practiced familiarity. Through the contact, she felt his swirling emotions, determination, fear for her safety, and that deeper feeling that had grown between them over the months. "What we're attempting tomorrow," he said, "it's never been done. If anything happens to you dash." Selina silenced him with a gentle touch to his cheek. "You taught me that change comes when someone is brave enough to stand up. Now it's time to prove that together, we're stronger than their cruelty." James turned to face her fully, his gray eyes intense in the moonlight. "When did you become so wise?" "I had a good teacher." She smiled, her natural glow brightening slightly. "You showed me that humanity's greatest strength isn't just saying, 'no more,' to injustice. It's believing in the possibility of something better." He pulled her close, and they sat in comfortable silence, drawing strength from each other's presence. Tomorrow would bring danger, but tonight was for this moment of peace they'd carved out together. The infiltration began exactly as planned. Selena and her team, their abilities carefully masked, were processed through the hub's receiving area. Each guard they passed, each document stamped, brought them closer to their goal. James's team, disguised as maintenance workers, moved through the station's service corridors. The first sign that something was wrong came when they reached the central processing area. The security chief, a scarred drachnid, studied Selena too closely. "You seem familiar," he growled. Instead of panic, Selena felt a strange calm. She straightened, letting her disguise fall away. "I should. I'm what you fear most, proof that your power is an illusion." All hell broke loose. The former captives moved as one, their combined abilities overwhelming the unprepared guards. Selena's power, once used only for healing, now served a different purpose: justice. She projected waves of disorientation, turning the syndicate's own fear against them. James's team burst in from multiple entry points, their timing perfect. But the syndicate's leaders weren't going down without a fight. Security forces poured in, filling the air with weapons fire. Through their mental link, Selena felt James's focused determination as he fought his way to the central controls. She gathered her strength, preparing for what came next. This was the moment everything had led to. "Now," she called out. Every luminary in the room joined their powers, creating a cascading wave of emotional energy that rippled through the station. Guards dropped their weapons, overcome by the combined weight of all the pain and fear they'd inflicted on others. James reached the main console, uploading the virus that would expose every syndicate operation, every corrupt official, every hidden facility across the sector. "It's done," he shouted. "Fall back." But Selena wasn't finished. She approached the security chief, who lay trembling on the floor. "You wondered if we were worth more as slaves or commodities," she said quietly. "Now you understand, our worth was never yours to decide." The aftermath was chaos of a different kind. As syndicate operations crashed across the sector, rescue teams moved in to free captives. Evidence poured out to every major news network, making it impossible for corrupt officials to hide their involvement. Back on their ship, heading away from the station, Selena watched the reports flood in. James joined her, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Having regrets?" She leaned into him. "No. But I am thinking about what comes next. There are still people out there who need help." "Always the healer," he said fondly. "And the warrior," she reminded him. "You taught me I could be both." She turned in his arms. "Stay with me. Help me build something new." His answer was in his kiss, soft and sure. Through their contact, she felt his love, his pride, his absolute certainty that together they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, Selena reflected on her journey. She had gone from captive to survivor to liberator, but most importantly, she had discovered her own strength. And in James, she had found not just a savior or a partner, but someone who understood that true freedom meant choosing your own path. The stars streaked past the viewport, each one holding the promise of new beginnings. There would always be darkness in the galaxy, but now there were more people ready to stand against it. And where there was struggle, there would be hope, the kind of hope that could transform victims into heroes, and turn the impossible into reality. End.